Hey everyone, it's Mariana, and today's video is the first one in my new series where I'm going to be doing short reviews of a few movies in one video. And if you want to hear more about that, check my updates video. But today I am talking about Oscar-nominated documentaries. I'm talking about four: Amy, What Happened to Miss Simone, Cartel Land, and Winter on Fire. All very good documentaries that are absolutely worth your time. Amy is the documentary that I hear about the most, and it's probably the favorite for a lot of people out of all of the documentaries that are nominated for an Oscar this year. And this is, of course, the biographical documentary about the very talented Amy Winehouse. It is done found footage style, and it pretty much covers her entire life from her childhood to her career to her tragic death. And as a documentary, Amy is very well crafted and very effective. I loved the way the lyrics of her songs were used to illustrate a certain point or a certain event in her life, and overall it came together really well. As someone who did not discover Amy Winehouse until her life unfortunately became this scandalous event in the media, I have to say I found this documentary to be very informative, and it showed Amy in an honest way as a person and as an artist. It didn't shy away from anything. It showed the good and the bad and all of the struggles that she had. It also did a very good job demonstrating the appalling treatment she got from the media and the ways in which it affects a person, the ways in which it affected her. So this documentary to me was very insightful and also very heartbreaking. I did find the beginning of the documentary a little bit weaker than the rest of it. It definitely seemed to me like the filmmakers were more interested in the way that her career developed and in the way that she unfortunately fell apart. But as a whole, the documentary is definitely worth watching, and I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Moving on to What Happened to Miss Simone, this is another biographical documentary, this time about the legendary Nina Simone, and it's told mostly through her own words, which is very interesting. And I have to say, I was really looking forward to watching this one, but even though I still really liked it, I am sad to say that this was my least favorite out of all of the documentaries that I'm talking about today. And here's why I feel this way. Nina Simone is a fascinating woman. She is incredibly talented. She had a lot of things that she struggled with throughout her life, and she fought for things that she believed in with a lot of passion. And even though this documentary touches on all of these things throughout the film, it never really dives deep enough with any of this. Because this documentary tries to cover a lot of ground, it often feels brief, and there were a few moments where I was really into what they were talking about and what it was portraying, and then the documentary just moved on to the next topic and I was left wanting more. I did really enjoy learning more about Nina Simone and about her opinions and about what she believed in and hearing it in her own words. And I also really liked the reoccurring theme that had to do with living authentically that the film kept coming back to. However, I kept wishing that it was either longer or that it focused on a more specific period in her life, because like I said, it did feel a little brief. Still, I think What Happened to Miss Simone is a very good documentary, and it is absolutely worth checking out, especially if you don't know much about Nina Simone, but I'm going to be giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I want to talk about Cartel Land, and this documentary is intense to say the least. It has to do with Mexico's drug wars, and it is told from 2 different perspectives. One follows Jose Mireles in Mexico, who assembles a group of people to try to fight this violent drug cartel called the Knights Templar, and the other follows an American veteran in Arizona whose goal is to stop Mexico's drug wars from going across the border. Cartel Land is pretty much the real-life version of Sicario, which is a movie that also came out in 2015, and if you thought that movie was dark, you should watch Cartel Land and then talk to me about it. It does not sugarcoat any of the problems or the consequences. It is brutal, it is intense, intense, it is graphic, it is difficult to watch at times, it is all of these things because the subject is definitely heavy. While I wasn't the biggest fan of the American side of the story, I have to say both sides show how complex this issue is and how little help they're getting, and how the misunderstanding and the misrepresentation of the problem creates even more issues. A subtle theme going through the entire documentary is the view on vigilantes in this particular situation, because that's what the two perspectives are. They are people who are taking justice into their own hands because they're not getting the support from the government that they need. And for all intents and purposes, these people are heroes of the story. And as viewers, we are kind of guided to root for them. But at the same time, we see them do these really questionable or flat out terrible things. And that makes you question the moral message of this whole thing. It just kind of puts things in an interesting perspective. Despite this whole vigilante in question thing, I found Cartel to be very effective, and I think it's a necessary documentary to watch, so I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And last but definitely not least, I want to talk about Winter on Fire. This documentary covers the events in Ukraine that happened during the late 2013, early 2014, when peaceful protests in support of European integration turned into violence. I have to be honest with you, this documentary is very close to my heart because I was born and raised in Kiev, and I also grew up within walking distance of where these events unfolded. So of course, watching Winter on Fire had a huge effect on me. However, even in my attempts to be as objective as possible, I have to say this is an incredibly powerful and hard to watch documentary. It is graphic, it is violent, and it may be a bit too much to handle for some people. Winter on Fire does a very good job summarizing the events and putting them into context, especially with the opening and closing text. It definitely is very informative, and if you're not familiar with the situation, it will clue you in. It is very effective in the way that it shows things, and it demonstrates the national spirit and the values, and shows people from different backgrounds and different religions coming together because they believe in this one idea as a nation, which is a fascinating thing to watch, but also a heartbreaking thing to watch because of what happened. The closing text of Winter on Fire makes sure that the viewer understands that the problems didn't end with this event, and even though the demonstrators did get what they wanted in the end, it kind of led to more issues in a way, and there's a civil war going on right now, and people are still dying. So this documentary really captures the situation well, in my opinion. Because of all these reasons, and because of its effectiveness, and because it's close to my heart, I have to give Winter on Fire 5 out of 5 stars. That's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Movie Blend. Let me know if you have seen any of these documentaries and what did you think of them. Also, let me know in the comments below what was the best documentary that you have seen recently. I would love to know. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye!